Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to grecochess, the YouTube channel dedicated to the game of chess. My name is Karilaos Aniziris, and I'm continuing the series of games suggested to me by my Facebook friends. In this video, it's a turn of my Facebook friend Achilleas Zographos that after I presented his own game, he requested that I present two games by a close friend of his, Georgios Sιώρης, that unfortunately has died since then. In the previous video, we presented the first game that he faced the international master Panagiotis Pandavos. And now it is the turn of the game that Georgios Sιώρης played against Ευστράτιος Καμινέλλης. The game took place at Αμπελόκηποι, a neighborhood of Athens. The year was 1999. We don't have the ratings from that year because the oldest FIDE ratings go until the year 2000. In the year 2000, meaning a year after that game, George's rating was 22-23. Ευστράτιος was 2016, making George the favorite. George's latest rating was from the year 2009. It was 22-25, while Ευστράτιος, his rating has increased a little from 2016 to 2036. And we're going to the chessboard of chess.com. And we are sharing the screen. On the left half of the screen, we are going to see the chessboard. I'm going to enter the moves one by one, copy them from the score sheet, while on the right half, we are going to see the computer evaluation. Positive number means white is doing better. Negative number means black is doing better. The computer will make a comment on the move. If it was a book move, a brilliant, a great, a good move, the best possible, inaccuracy, mistake, or blunder, will show which move would have been the best and also what are the top 5 options for the other player whose turn is to come. And we start the game. George had the white pieces. Ευστράτιος had the black. And George starts by moving his pawn to e4, the most popular first move for white. And Ευστράτιος replies the symmetric way, pawn to e5. Most players will play the c pawn to c5, the Sicilian defense. But e5, I would say, is a good alternative, the second most popular. King's pawn opening, you're going to see here the comment of the computer. Next move, George will send his knight to f3. This is the most popular second move for this kind of opening. Some alternatives might be pawn goes to d4 when effectively you gambit a pawn for quick development. And here the most popular move for black, second move after this opening, is knight goes to c6. But Ευστράτιος will play the second most popular, knight goes to f6, a symmetric one. And this is called the Petrov's defense, or also it's called the Russian defense. Third move. The most popular move for white at this point is knight from f3 takes on e5. But George will do something different. Pawn goes to d4. And black has two options. Either use the pawn from e5 to take to d4 or the knight from f6 to take the pawn on e4. What is Ευστράτιος going to do? He decides to use the knight to take on e4. If you use the pawn to take on d4, then the pawn from e4 can go to e5, threaten the knight, and occupy more space. So Ευστράτιος takes a pawn on e4. And now, for George, the computer would suggest that knight takes on e5 as the best move. Take back your pawn, but George decides to do something a little bit different. The second most popular, or the second best according to the computer, bishop to d3, attacking the knight on e4. How will Ευστράτιος reply? Instead of moving the knight, he decides to defend it by sending the pawn to d5. And this is called, every move we make, the defense is changing. Until now, we have what is, you read here, Petrov's defense, Steinitz attack, symmetrical, center variation. And now George will take the pawn on e5, will equalize the material. Knight to d7 for Ευστράτιος that develops his knight and threatens the white knight on e5. I will change on d7. Kingside castling for George, and Ευστράτιος is going to send his queen to h4. This is, I would say, a little bit, let's call it provocative move, in the sense that the white rook cannot leave f1, otherwise the f2 pawn is lost. And if the bishop goes to d6 for black, then the h2 pawn is also in danger. How is... but before we go to the move of George, we have some comments about this game that came to us with the score sheet. And they are written in Greek, but I'm going to translate them in English. The comment is the following: a dynamic move in that variation of the Russian defense that was played a lot at that time. Today, we usually play bishop goes to d6. That is the Greek comment that comes together with the score sheet, and I'm going to read from that every time there is a comment. And now this point will continue the next move of George, pawn to c4. If, of course, white could play for a second time, takes a pawn on d5, and then the knight on e4 is in danger. And kingside castling for Ευστράτιος, and we have a case of opposite side castling. And like in the previous game, both sides will try to attack the enemy king as fast as possible, and it seems that Ευστράτιος is faster because they have already placed a queen on h4 supported by the knight on e4, and the knight on d6 is not far from entering the game. That is why George will push the pawn to c5 instead of taking the free pawn on d5, because now the bishop cannot come to d6 and threaten mate on h2. But what is Ευστράτιος going to do? He will start attacking the g-pawn. G-pawn goes to g5. Completed the first 9 moves. They are all book moves. Petrov's defense, Tiny's attack, symmetrical center variation, according to the comments. And the 10th move. Knight to c3 for George to develop his knight. And knight to f6 for Ευστράτιος, which he would like, if possible, is place a knight on g4 and threaten mate on h2. There's one more comment. We're going to read it. Computer thinks that this move is inaccuracy. Would rather have the bishop go to g7. But let's see the comment. The comment says the following: this move cannot be a good one based on the general principles, but it is the second most played move, with the top one being bishop to g7, exactly the one that computer suggested. At this point, we have completed the first 10 moves for each side, and after the inaccuracy of Ευστράτιος, computer gives George an advantage of 0.97. Let's continue. Bishop to e2 for George, that controls g4 square. Let's see, can the knight go to g4? Computer thinks it's inaccuracy. We don't have the pawn go to g3, but by doing so, you weaken the place in front of your king. Now, Ευστράτιος can put neither the bishop or d7 or the knight on f6 on g4, because they'll be only protected once by the queen on h4 and attacked twice, bishop e2 and queen d1. That was the reason behind that. But let's read the comment that we have. This is a novelty by George that preserves white's advantage. Computer has an alternative. Knight could even go to b5. Let's see, does the computer suggest anywhere? This is the fourth best move on the computer. G3 is the top one, and bishop to E2 is nowhere among the top 5. So here we are. And Ευστράτιος is going to push his pawn to H5. Black, after they castled queenside, they will try, if possible, to push the G and H, perhaps the F pawn, as near the white king as possible. Pawn to G3 for George. Mistakes is a computer. Now really you create a hole, and you're going to see it on H3, where Ευστράτιος will place his king. That's why at this point, now Ευστράτιος starts having an advantage. 1.16 sees the computer. Queen goes to H3. Things start becoming dangerous for George, because now the H pawn, the pawn at H5 also exerts pressure on G4. So now Ευστράτιος can place a piece on H4 without the piece being lost. Let's see, how is George going to reply? Because really, the knight can go G4, exchange with the, if the bishop goes G4, exchange with the white bishop, and then the knight goes to G4, and we're talking about mate on F2. So, in fact, a computer says that queen to H3 is a great move, not that difficult to think about it. How will George reply? Pawn to F3. To have better control of the G4 square, great move, says the computer. And let's read the comment. It's trying to encircle the black queen. So white is hoping not only to thwart the black's attack, but if possible to win black's queen. Where can the black queen go? If it's attacked, it can go to E6 and F5. The white bishop on D3 might be able to control it. What would happen if the pawn went to G4? The queen could go only to H4, and then if the white bishop could go C2 and D1, then the black queen could be lost. So black, yes, it's nicely attacking, but it also be very, very careful. Pawn to G4 for Ευστράτιος. Rook to F2 for George. And you're going to see now what's happening. Inaccuracy in the computer. If white could play a second move in a row, bishop to F1, and the black queen is lost. But of course, black is not going to allow it, and Ευστράτιος will take the pawn on F3. Mistakes in the computer would rather have the pawn go to H4, because if pawns somehow exchange the H pawn with the G pawn, then you see a rook and the queen on the H file would be very powerful. Bishop to F1 for Ευστράτιος, and is attacking the black queen, and the queen goes back to E6. The queen was not lost, but black's attack becomes weaker. We completed 15 moves, and at this point, Ευστράτιος with black has an advantage of 0.54. And white, George is going to take the pawn on F3, and now material is the same. And after that, the early black attack is over. Knight to G4 for Ευστράτιος. Rook to E2 for George, that's attacking the black queen. And queen goes to G6. Opposite white king. Bishop to F4 for Ευστράτιος. And knight goes to H6. I'm sorry. Bishop to F4 for George. And knight to H6 for Ευστράτιος. And computer thinks that this is a blunder. And now white has an important advantage of 1.76. Let's see why is this a case. First of all, let's read at the Greek comments. Black is entering a worse position, most likely because black got stressed from the threat of bishop takes on c7 and knight takes on d5 that definitely white was preparing. Yes, what white could do is place a bishop on c7, knight on b5, comes with a check, and king doesn't have too many squares to go. So, yes, white will have to sacrifice material, but let's see what will happen now. Queen is going to take on d5, and bishop goes to g6. The computer would rather have the bishop take on c7, and bishop on g7. So now the two black rooks can communicate with each other, d8 and h8, and the bishop on g7 controls an important long diagonal from a1 to h8. Rook to e7 for George. He is not yet able to grab the bishop on d7 because attacked twice, defended twice. Same thing with the pawn on f7, attacked twice, defended twice. But little by little, he's trying to break black's defenses. Great moves is the computer. And knight goes to f5 for Ευστράτιος. Bishop to g2 for George, and computer says it's brilliant. Why? Because white is sacrificing the rook on e7, but if black takes it, then white has checkmate on b7. Most likely this is not going to happen, not at that level of these players. Pawn to c6 for Ευστράτιος, and blocks the entrance to b7 and the checkmate. White has no checkmate. The queen can go to neither d6 nor e5. d6 is controlled by the black knight on f5, and e5 is controlled by the black bishop on g7. So white cannot create a battery along the dark squares with queen and bishop. And let's see how is the game going to continue. Another wonderful, brilliant move for George. Knight goes to b5, but Ευστράτιος can take neither the knight nor the queen. Let's see why. If the knight is taken, the queen b7 is made. If the queen is taken, knight to a7 is also made. This is twice as brilliant because you are offering your opponent two of your pieces. Your opponent can choose either one of them, and none can is good for them. In fact, they even offer the rook on e7. So this is a very rare case where white George is offering three of his pieces. Ευστράτιος can take any of these three, but next move is checkmate. Once again, let's enjoy. If knight is taken, queen b7 mate. If queen is taken, knight e7 is mate. And if rook is taken, then again, knight to a7 is mate. That is why this, I would even give more than 2 exclamation marks. This is a 3 times brilliant move. And let's see what do the Greek comments have to say about that. George in his element. No chance any longer for the black monarch. And let's see how is Ευστράτιος going to react. Well, there is a Greek expression when the singer in the church doesn't know what to sing, he is coughing, meaning give yourself some extra time. Aporia psaltu vix is a Greek expression. So the equivalent here is Ευστράτιος, since he doesn't know how to defend against all these threats. Let's check now. This at least will give us one move of respite. Computer thinks that this is the best, but even with that best move, George has an advantage of plus 10.0. This is enormous. And what is George going to do? Queen takes on d4. This is the best. But once again, George offers 3 of his pieces for grabs. If the rook is taken, the knight to a7 mate. Meaning because the knight on f5 is attacking both the rook on e7 and the queen on d4. If the queen is taken, again knight to a7 is made. So what is Ευστράτιος going to do? Well, at least now, if you take the knight, well, that's what he's going to do. There is no checkmate because the queen cannot go to b7. But where will the queen go? And queen goes to e5. This is the move of George. You see the m13, meaning if George plays perfectly, in at most 13 moves, he has a checkmate. In fact, that's what the computer says now, but then the best 5 options for black offer white a mate in at most 8 moves, you see here. 8 moves is black plays the best move with knight to d6. You see that if white could play second time in a row, white has checkmate both on b8 and c7, so black needs to find a way to block them. Knight to d6 will postpone it a little bit, and then black can even send the queen to c2. Rook to c1, queen exchanges with the rook. The other rook goes to e8, queen to c5 check, bishop to c6, rook to c7 check now, king to b8, rook to b7 check, bishop will take it, queen c7 check, king a8, and queen to b7 mate. That would have happened had black not resigned, but at this point, Ευστράτιος resigned. Unfortunately, George is not alive any longer to listen to me congratulating him. It's unfortunate, but I hope at least showing these games brought some joy to his friend Achilleas Zographos. But let's give a look now at the review. Let's see what does the computer think about this game. Computer gives 89.9 for George with a performance of 2400. That is quite above his rating at the time, 200 points approximately. For Ευστράτιος, his percentage was 77.3 and he played with 1850 performance, a little bit less than his own. In the various categories, George had 2 brilliant moves and 1 great. Best move 6 for George, 5 for Ευστράτιος. Excellent 1 each. Good moves 2 for George, 1 Ευστράτιος. 9 book moves each of them. And the negatives, Ευστράτιος had 1 inaccuracy. George, each of them had 2 mistakes. George had 1 miss and Ευστράτιος 2, and Ευστράτιος had 2 blunders. At this point, we complete the presentation of this game. And let's go to the tournament, see what's happening. Nothing has changed in grecochess, as you see here. 8 games. I'm sorry. Yes, 8. Let's be correct. 8 games to go for the grecochess for the first round. 6 of hunting achievements. That has about a couple of weeks to play. Move has not played since October 20th. If a hunting achievements does not play, then in a couple of weeks, Maxim Govoruka from the Ukraine is one of the finalists. Barak 7 from Israel and My Skin from Italy have advanced already. And in group number 3, where I participate, is between me, the Harry from Greece, and the Line from Hungary. Well, let's look at the other tournament. The Moonlight Underwater. Underwater Moonlight, the 9 Moons tournament with 81 people starting in 9 groups of 9. We have almost 2/3 of the games of the first round have been completed, 430 completed, 215 to go. And let's see the various categories. The various groups, I would say. Group 1, Lotus Time Chess from Japan has 13.5 points. Group 2, Spider 99 from Egypt has 11. Group 3, Zanilo, the organizer of the tournament, Zanilo from Italy, has 10 points. Group 4, Iraq Lion from Iraq has 8 points. Group 5, Sinan Fu from Greenland has 12 points. Group 6, Mathis B 2008 from France has 2008. Group 7, Gennard F66 from the Ukraine has 13 points. No, actually not from the Ukraine, from Uzbekistan, I'm sorry, has 13 points. My group number 8, I'm leading with 6 points, but with 7 defeats, my odds are not so great, to put it mildly. Group 9, the last one, Lua 000 from Spain is leading with 8 points. That's it for now. As we have, if I'm correct, one more of my Facebook friends with 1 or 2 games to go. And then I'll continue with my own games in my 2 most recent tournaments. Thanks to all the viewers, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks to the subscribers. And to the likes and the encouraging comments. That's it for now. I'm Karilas Aniziris. This is my YouTube channel, grecochess. Ladies and gentlemen, goodbye.